Well, after having been there for a while, I think it must have been around about January, our hostesses found that it was practically impossible to keep the whole family any longer. There were rumors in the village that there were more and more people being picked up, and they became very scared and didn't want to keep us any longer. That was for my parents as well as for the two of us, my brother and I. So, but where to go to? Because up to our escape to the familie Paase, which is the family who lived in Hillegom, our contact has been able to keep contact with us by providing more food coupons and keeping us informed of what was going on or what. So we did have occasional contact with the outside world through Adrie, the contact. But by that time, when we were going to be too much for the family Paase, contact with Adrie was lost because she herself apparently was being subject to being interrogated at her home, according to what I heard later. But in any case, we were not to know why the contact was lost, but there was no contact anymore, and we had to leave from Hillegom. So I don't know what my parents did, I don't know what my brother did, but I had an old friend living near The Hague in a place called Rijswijk, who together with me worked at the firm in The Hague before we had to go into hiding. And she was one of these very what do you call it? Very pro-royalist. I can't find the right words in English. I can't speak English anymore.
That's okay. The English is still excellent.
So I knew where she lived, although we really, all the contacts we had before I had to go into hiding was at the works. So, but I did know her address, and I thought, well, maybe I'll go to her, seeing that she is so very anti-Nazi. Maybe, if not at her place, maybe she knows, you know, if maybe it's possible that she could find me another place to go into hiding.
But you said you didn't remember her address.
Yeah.
You did?
Yeah. I didn't go and see her there. I'd never been to her place before, because, you know, the contact I had was at work. But she did exchange, and I think she must have said to me before the war, if you're ever before I went into hiding, if you're ever in trouble, you can, you know, contact me. Don't lose contact. So I remembered that, and so I did go to her place in Rijswijk, where she lived. Now apparently she was one in a family of about 6 or 7 fairly adult children. They were all teenagers or young, newly married, and it was the whole day. It was a life there of comings and goings of friends and families, and telephone going, and of course I was not to be seen. So you know, when I called there, and I don't remember who opened the door, and I said that I was a friend of Truus, that I would like to talk to her. She did happen to be home, and when she saw me, she asked me quickly to come in. And so I discussed my problem with her, and she said, well, you stay here. You have to stay here till we find you something, you know, where you can stay permanently. So I stayed with her. I think I was locked up in her room, I don't remember.
But you had to take care of your family also. They
No.
also had to find a new place,
No,
didn't they?
I lost contact with them there and then. When I left Hillegom, I took the train. So my parents and my brother, they went somewhere else, I don't know where.
Ah, they didn't wait till you come back.
To come back where?
I thought that you were going to arrange another place for all of you. So
No,
you should
I
go
couldn't. I
back.
couldn't arrange anything. They had to arrange for themselves, and I and my brother had to arrange for himself, and I had to think of something where I could go to, because we had lost the contact with Adrie, because she was just not anymore.
So you took your suitcase and went
Took
to
my
this
suitcase, took
friend.
the train, and went to Rijswijk. So I stayed with Truus, I think, for about a week, when apparently in that week, apparently Adrie must have made contact with the family Paase again, and they told her where I had gone to.
They knew?
So I told them where I was going to try to go to. So that the contact would be, there would be a contact at least. And so when Adrie found out that I was there, and when I could not stay there any longer, but Adrie didn't know what to do with me, where to go, she said, well, you better come home with me and you stay at my home. Now, her home was a well-known bakery in Voorburg. I mean, you everywhere saw the bakery cards of Vijfwinkel. I knew the name Vijfwinkel from the bakery, it was just... but at their home, they had the bakery and the shop. So there was 3 in 1. It was the home, the bakery, and the shop. So she was not the only one involved in underground work at her home. Her father was too, and her brother was too, and her one of her brothers and her only sister knew of it but was not involved. So, but she and her brother were heavily involved in underground work, and her father was really the boss. I mean, he knew all about it, and he had his good advice to give, but he didn't do much. But her brother, when I came to stay with Adrie and her family, her brother was taken prison and was sitting in a jail in the south of Holland.
Because of
his underground affiliations, yes. And he stayed for 2 years in prison. And how he came out, I don't know. What they've done with him, I heard this all after the war. And Adrie did not want to tell her mother that I was hidden there, so I was to be her home help. She was an elderly woman. Adrie was at that stage, I think she was in her late 20s already. So her mother was an elderly woman who could do very well with some homework. She was not very well, and, so I was the live-in. So I don't know why. Somehow Adrie must have told her that I was not to go out, to do shoppings or anything like that. But I was the home help as far as she was concerned. But as far as I am concerned, I was hidden there. I was absolutely hidden because I was not to be seen in the bakery. I was not to be seen in the shop. I was not to be seen anywhere. I was washing the floors and dusting and cooking and, you know, whatever. So, because it was not the intention of Adrie to keep me there, because her house was far too much suspect. Because of her and her brother, who was already taken away. So anyway, I stayed there because she couldn't find no proper place for me to go to. So I stayed there for about, can you see how long I stayed there? Because it came all back to me at first and now I've lost it.
From January till February, about a month.
No, that was in Rijswijk. And then the next one.
Since February till September.
Yeah. So for about, I think about 6 months, I stayed with the family Vijfwinkel.
That's the place she found for you.
No, that is where that was her own home.
In her
own home.
Stayed,
for 6 months.
More than 6 months.
I stayed for hiding in her home for about 6 months, from February to September. Say February, March, April, May, June, July, August. 8 months.
And although that was the suspicious.
It was suspicious.
That maybe the house is under surveillance or something like that.
Yeah. I stayed there for all that time. And you know, whenever there were visitors or whenever there was anybody, it was a very busy household too, I was upstairs. In the attic I had a little room. And that was where I was whenever there was any traffic of other people in the house.
Was it the most dangerous place from all the places you were hidden in?
Yeah, it was.
Can you describe me the feelings, something about the life in that place?
Yeah. Well, every movement which I made there was full of anxiety and fear. Because, as you say, it was under suspicion. The whole house was under suspicion. And therefore, I mean, I was hiding myself whenever I could hide myself, whenever I was, even when I was washing the floors, or I could not beat the carpets outside. I couldn't do anything. I was not going to go outside the backyard, the kitchen door to the backyard. I was not going to go outside the front door of the shop. I couldn't get anywhere. I was really, trapped everywhere. But I was, because her mother was not to know, I was a member of the family. I ate with them at the table. And
what was your cover story?
My cover story was a help for her. Her mother didn't know. She may have had her suspicion and kept quiet, I don't know, but she wasn't.
It wasn't strange for her that you can't go out?
It must have been, but nobody talked about it. Nobody. And so I had my meals with them at the table, and I learned Our Father in Heaven, and they were a very orthodox, reformed Christian family. And on Sundays I sat with them in the lounge reading books, and that was how it was for nearly 8 months. I think I was there, till one day, indeed, because it was under suspicion, the Gestapo entered the shop, and I was cooking in the kitchen when Adrie suddenly came dashing into the kitchen. Rie, be gone! No, Rie, be gone. Rie was my name. Be away with you. No, what? Took off my apron, and I went out of the back door, because she came from the front, so I couldn't go that way. I couldn't go out of the kitchen into the house. I had to go out of the kitchen door into the backyard, being faced with that's why about the measurements, with a fence about that high. There was a door in the...
A meter and a half.
About a meter and a half, yeah. There was a door in the fence, but of course that door was locked and I didn't have the key. So I had to scale that wall somehow. It was grown with shrubs and trees. So I got over that, I don't know how. And then I started, that was about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And then I started walking around the block. Didn't know where to go, what to do. I just walked around and tried to stay away from the vicinity of the shop. It was a corner shop. This was the shop here, and here was the house, and here behind here was the bakery. It was, you know. So I walked around and I walked around.
You had your first papers with you?
No, I had nothing with me. Absolutely nothing. I was cooking in the kitchen. I don't carry my papers. I carried my papers into the kitchen. I remember I was trying to fry meat. I'd never fried meat before. So I didn't quite know how to do it. I was trying to make the best of it. And here was Ari dashing into the kitchen. So I walked around the block. I don't know how often. I've lost count, but I kept walking. I kept walking that whole afternoon, and I thought maybe towards shop closing time there might not be so many people in the shop, and I'll just go in and I'll pretend I'm a shopper, and I'll ask if it is safe to come back in or what to do. So that's what I did. And when Nell, that was her sister, because she was managing the shop. She was managing the shop, and Adrie was managing all the hidden people. And her brother was managing the bakery. So Nell was in the shop. And I walked into the shop, and as soon as she said me, "Come in." So I went in, and I went straight to the back of the shop, to the living quarters. And Adrie wasn't there, so I didn't know what to do, so I went to my room upstairs in the attic. So after shop had closed, and I think it was after Adrie came home, Adrie, apparently what has happened that afternoon, unfortunately, I cannot recall that story. I would have liked to have that story on tape. Adrie told me after I met her, after the war, what had happened that afternoon. They interrogated her for 4 hours and have been unable to get anything out of her. I don't know what they did with her. She was too modest to tell me.
She was taken to the headquarters?
No, the interrogation took place in her home. And yeah, I think afterwards she was taken to the Gestapo and had been left free again, because she came home again, because she wasn't there when I came. See, because you know there may be some flaws in my story here, because I'm not quite sure about what exactly happened. So she must have been taken and let free again. And so when she came, it was well after dark. It must have been maybe about 7 o'clock at night. When Nell told her, of course, that I was back here, that she said, "Yes, but listen, that's impossible. It can't be any more. Can't be any longer. What to do? What to do?" She didn't know. She was suspect. She couldn't go out and arrange anything with me, for me. So apparently they phoned up somebody in the neighborhood. Yes, I could spend the night there. So till they had, sorted out their thoughts and knew what to do. So I could spend another night in the neighborhood there with an elderly widow. I was there.
You said before that she was too modest to tell you. You mean what was going on?
Yeah, what exactly has been going on during the interrogation. She didn't tell me exactly. She did tell me that she was interrogated for 4 hours. And apparently she must have been taken before interrogation or during or after, I don't know, to the police, to the headquarters or to the Gestapo, wherever that was. And then she must have been let free. But it meant that not only her brother was suspect, but she is also, and she was already before, and she was doubly suspect. It's not a word. More so in danger now than ever before because of what had happened that afternoon. So the next evening Adri came to me, I don't know how she dared, with 2 bikes, because we had to go on the bike to some other address, which was not a permanent address, but it was again somewhere where she thought those people might, because of their loyalty to the royal family and to the country, and their anti-Nazi feelings, that they might be wanting to or willing to put me up. So we went on the bike there, and I will never forget that moment that we were standing out on the street, and Adri rang the bell, and the door was being pulled open. It went with a rope along was upstairs. The living was upstairs. The door was pulled open, and a woman about 8 months pregnant with a little 1.5-year-old one on her arm stood at the top of the stairs, and Adri and I stood downstairs with our bicycles there, and Adri said, what was her name again? I forget her name now, but it was Mrs. Cole. But she called her by her first name, and she said, "Is it possible? Can you help us with somebody else? Have you got room? Can you take another one in?" Because she had been taking hiders quite a lot of times before, and they had to go again because it was dangerous, or because they were dangerous, or it was this or that or the other. For some reason or another, she had been hiding people before, but she had decided, that's the last time, and I won't do it anymore. It's too dangerous, I don't dare anymore. I've got 2 little, soon 2 little ones, and I just don't dare to anymore. So this is what she said to Adri. She said, "Adri, I'm sorry, but I can't. I cannot do it anymore. I'd like to," they stood pleading, Adri pleading there, and her making her excuses that she could not do it anymore. And then, after this had gone on for a couple of minutes.
That was on the street?
Yeah, we were standing outside. We were standing outside on the street in front of the front door. There was a pavement, there was no garden. There was a pavement, and then the front door of a house, and the door was being pulled open, and so she stood, upstairs, and we were down there. And then suddenly she looked at me. She got hold of, took a look at me, and then she looked at Adri again and again at me, and then she said, "Okay, with you I'll dare to." Why? I don't know. But she took me in.
Maybe because you didn't look Jewish?
Yeah, I think so. That's always been a help. So she took me in, but I knew it was going to be for temporary till, Adri would find something else for me again. And so I was there for 3 weeks. And it was such a darling family. They were of very little means, but nothing was too much for them to do for me. They really accepted me there as a guest. And no, I was not to help, because I said, yes, of course I want to help you. I want to help you with the little one. I want to do the dishes for you. I'm not a guest here. I'm only, I'm so happy that you allowed me to be with you till I find something else. Nobody knows how long I was going to be there. They were real darlings. They were also Reformed Christians, very, very, very Orthodox.
You didn't have to hide there?
I didn't have to.
To hide? You were with them?
Yeah, I was with the family. I was with the family there, in the house, not outside. The children, I mean the little one couldn't talk yet, and she and her husband, they knew, and it was okay. So I was just to go into my room whenever there was anybody visiting, or you know. So that only lasted 3 weeks, and when I left, no, I first tell you where I had to go to, because Adrie had found me a place in Den Haag, The Hague, and she had arranged for Mr. Cole to bring me there, on the bikes again. So when I left, when I said goodbye to her, I handed her over a 10 guilder note. It was far too little for, you know, for what I had cost them, but, you know, that was all I could do. That was all I had to offer them. That was all I had in my possession from the underground. And so I said to her, "And that is for you." And she said, "No, it's not for me, it's for you. You may need it more than we do." And so I didn't know what to do with it. I thought, you know, the underground will provide me with more if I need to, and if not, we'll see what's going to happen. So anyway, before I left, I secretly put it in the sugar bowl. I thought, no, I don't want it. It is for them, you know, because they were a poor family, and I thought, no. Anyway, he took me to the people in The Hague. He was a teacher and a headmaster of a school for children who have got difficulties with education, difficult children. And she was an author. She wrote books. It was a very nice family. They had 3 children with number 4 on the way. And the children were not to know anything at all. I was their household help. I was not to go out shopping, but the children wouldn't notice that. They wouldn't. The eldest was 9, was a girl of 9. And then there was a boy of 7 and a little deaf and dumb girl aged 3. And so I was their help there, and that went wonderfully well. For how long have I been there? Till December 1944, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now
it means more than a year.
Possibly, yeah. I spent there. I spent the longest time there, and what has been bothering me up till today is that I've never been able to make contact with them anymore after the war. They were not living anymore there. The neighbors didn't know where they were. They couldn't give me any information. I looked in the telephone book for their name and looked for his first name. It was F. Krantz. F. Krantz. And I rang them, and no, they are not, no, I don't know them. Even there were a whole lot of Krantzes, like a whole lot of Phillipses. So I've given up in the end. I thought, well, you know, because I would really have loved to have them to have been inscribed here too. Anyway, you know, that went wonderfully well. I was very happy there. I didn't have all that much anxieties. I felt fairly, I wouldn't say safe, but I felt fairly safe. I knew that, you know, if anybody came, I was not there. I was just away. And there's always, nobody walked into the door without ringing the doorbell. So when the doorbell rang, I was gone upstairs. So I also was there during the big invasion on the 6th of June 1942, and I thought, oh, 42? 44, sorry. This, sorry.
You mean when the Allies...
when the Allies invaded Normandy. I thought, finally, there's an end coming to it all, you know, finally. And then I heard that the south of the Netherlands was being freed, and we were, of course, in the upper part, just only just. And it just lasted and lasted, and then the hunger winter came. And that started already in September, October, November. November was bad. You know, they didn't have any food anymore. They didn't know how to feed their own family, leave alone me as well. What were they to do? And I knew that it was on their minds, you know, how to keep me any longer.
They didn't get support from the underground?
No, that I forgot to tell you. Contact was once again lost with Adrie. She disappeared from the time during that year that I was there. She disappeared out of the picture altogether. I never heard from her anymore. So I was left on my own, really. I didn't get any food coupons anymore either. No money. So, you know, I lived off them completely. I mean, I was helping the household. So as such, in their household, so as such, I should have earned a living there. So I didn't feel too bad for that. I felt I was earning my living. But no, contact was completely lost with Adrie after sometimes, I think it must have been already in March or April. For a long time there was no contact with her anymore. So yeah, I knew about that because I didn't hear from my parents or from my brother anymore. I didn't know if they were still alive.
This family wasn't, they weren't members of the underground?
No, no, they were just
good people.
Good people. They were just good people. And so I know how difficult she must have found it to tell me at long last that there was just absolutely no way that she could think of that she possibly could keep me any longer. But she said, I have been thinking of people whom I know who have sent their 2 teenagers up north, because there was food with the farmers up north in Groningen and in Friesland, to stay with relatives of them over there. So she must have a room, and what the food situation is there, I don't know, but I would suggest that my husband will take you there and you see what it's going to be like there and see how you go from there on. So that's what I did.
That was December?
That was early, very early in December. Could have been even the last of November. Early, very early, maybe one of the first days of December. Mr. Kranz, again on the bike, took me back to Voorburg, not far from where I lived. That's where this family lived. And of course the usual problems, you know. I think they must have contacted them by phone to ask if it was all right, you know, for me to be there, maybe for even a couple of days, or see how I go, or see what I can do from there on, because they couldn't keep me any longer. So this also a widow had agreed for me to come there that night. So I came in, and so she said, well, if you possibly can find somewhere else, you must do so, because what I have, I'm going to share with you, and it will, you know, till the end is there, till it lasts. I've sent my children away so that I could have some food, so now I have got you, so I've said yes, you know, to be able to give you a chance to go and find something else. So that was not very much help, but it was a tremendous help, because once more I had a roof over my head, and I slept in the attic, and they all had rooms in the attics there. You know, that's normal way of life there. The houses were built like that, with attics in the roof, rooms in the attics, and so not only my room was in the attic, but also there was a sugar bag with raw peas, you know, peas you use to make soup. And I was there three nights, and on the third night I got myself a handful of raw peas, and I ate those because there was nothing anymore. And I thought, well, I must find something, but you know, I had no contact with anybody anymore. I couldn't stay there any longer. I felt now that I was becoming a thief if I'm going to steal peas from that bag. You know, what am I going to do? So I've been thinking and thinking and thinking. I couldn't catch sleep. I've been thinking all night until the thought occurred to me that I had an aunt in Rotterdam who had been married out, and I didn't know whether they too have been picked up or what has happened to them. And I thought, I'm going to chance it, I'm going to Rotterdam. And so what I did, the elements were with me because it was a good thick blanket of snow. I took my suitcase, put it on a rope, and walked along the Vliet, which is a canal which goes from I think it comes from Voorburg, and it goes all the way to Rotterdam via Schiedam and all these little places along the way.
How did you know that your aunt is still in Rotterdam?
I didn't know. I said, I'm going to chance it. I have to chance it. I had to chance to be left out on the street with my suitcase. So that was, according to me, what I could think of at that time was the only hope I had. I didn't know to whom to go. Friends, I didn't know whether they were all right, and friends I had at that time. Most of them at that time were Jewish anyway, and they were picked up or hidden. So I thought, well, maybe she is still there. I knew that before I went into hiding that both her sons had to register themselves for the workforces in Germany. So what happened to them, I don't know, but I had hoped that maybe because she was married out that she might still be there. So I took that suitcase and I walked along the canal in the snow with a suitcase pulling behind me, which was not an unusual sight because there were many people going out foraging, going out up north and finding places where they could find food. So I was not an exception, which was, again, it was, Hashem helped me there too. So as I had walked for maybe 3/4 of an hour or so, now I think the walk to Rotterdam would have taken me maybe a couple of days, I don't know, I don't like to guess. But after I'd walked maybe about half an hour, 3/4 of an hour or an hour, I don't know, I can't tell you there either, there was a barge coming along the canal, and he asked me if he could give me a lift. And I first thought, no, I don't dare to, but then I thought, yes, of course I have to. So I said, yes, please, okay. So he took me as far as Schiedam, which is still about an hour's walk from Rotterdam. That's where he had to go to, so that's where I went off. And there were more people on board, whom he had picked up to give a ride. Because, there was just, there was not very much transport at the time at all, because the cars there was no gas, there was no fuel, they had no tires. The bicycles you saw around were with wooden wheels. Wooden, not the wheels, but instead of tires it was wood. The rail slopers, what do you call them? The wood which is the timber. No, the timber which is between the rail lines was stolen by people to use to make fires to cook on. There was nothing. The Germans had absolutely taken everything you could possibly think of. It was gone. There was nothing left in Holland. It's very, very hard for people who were not there at that time to realize how it was possible for people at all to keep alive. No food, no nothing. There was nothing. So that's how I got to Schiedam. And then, of course, I walked from Schiedam to Rotterdam, which took me about another hour. And so I landed at my aunt's place at about 7 o'clock in the morning. She opened the door. Roodje, because Rosetta, as a child at school, in the family, I was being called Ro or Roodje. Roodje, you're still alive. Are your parents still alive? Where's your brother? I said, I wished I knew. And so she said, but you know, of course, that I can't take you in. I said, yeah, I realized that, but I said, but I thought that perhaps you might know of somebody who might be able, because I have got no home at the moment. I've got no roof over my head. I've got nothing. I've got this. And she said, well, come in and have a little bit to eat first, have breakfast at least. So I had breakfast with her, and while talking with her, and where she slowly grasped the idea that I couldn't have known whether my parents are alive or not, that was my big worry myself. She said, you know what, I know a doctor here, and he is very, very anti-Nazi. I'm sure he has been working for the underground, she said. And I know that his wife has recently had twins and another little boy, and that she can use perhaps a household help. Maybe they can help you. So she said, wait till I ring them. So she did. And Mrs. Sandman, who was the doctor's wife, apparently said, well, we'll see, come and show her to me, come and we'll see what we can do. Maybe I might be able to find a way out. Maybe I can use her myself.
She said that you are her niece?
Yeah. She was a patient of the doctor, and she told her that it was her niece, that it involved her niece. And so she took me there. My aunt went with me. Oh no, my aunt didn't want to be seen with me. No way. No, I walked there. She gave me the address and I went there. And so I had a talk with Mrs. Sandman. And she said, look, I am willing to take you, but the problem is that you are not in hiding here. You are my live-in. You are to look after the children, you are looking after the household, you are going to open the door to patients, you are going to live here. Do you dare to do that?
It was dangerous for her also.
Of course. So I told her straight away, if you dare, I dare. Who am I not to dare? So she said that will have to be done. And that is where I stayed until D-Day. Not D-Day, my day. Till the 5th of May 1945. There, of course, I have had my problems and anxieties too. I was to take the children to the kindergarten. I was to go to the farmers to go and get milk. I was to go to do the odd message, but I was not to go to the supermarket. I was only allowed where there were not too many people, and she warned me for certain localities where to stay away from, because there were living people who were not quite 100%, and yeah, that was just about all. So I've had there a fairly I can't say it worryless life, but you know, it was good compared to all these other people.
You were never under suspicion?
No, no. And he never has been, and I know he has been doing work too.
You mean the
he
doctor?
Did, the doctor, yeah. Yeah.
You didn't meet
because he was a doctor, he could do a lot of things with his patients. He had many patients amongst the farmers, and that is where he, I'm sure, has been able to get people into hiding too. And when it was so terribly bad, was in the hunger, we still call it the hunger winter. I think that the world knows very little about what happened then in the west of Europe. Because he was a doctor, he has been able to get milk and meat and cheese and bread from the farmers. And so he has been able to not only help his family, but also help other people. Because it was still, the hunger at that stage was still at such a level that I have been baking fritters, what do you call them here? Fritters from tulip bulbs. Not from flour, like potato fritters from tulip bulbs. Latkes.
Levivot.
Yeah, yeah. And we were all rationed. You know, we only could have 2 slices of bread per day, and we could have half a liter of milk or something like that. I don't think so, quarter ounces of milk. And tea didn't exist, but it was all camouflage, what is it, ersatz? You know, make-believe tea. Water with a color. And so was coffee, there was no sugar, there was no, you name it, there was no nothing. There was no nothing. And then you can imagine what happened when they had their home overlooking meadows at the back. What happened at that time when it must have been in April, I think, about a month before the liberation, when the Swedish...
Was spring already?
Yeah, it was spring. When the Swedish aeroplanes came over to drop food from the Red Cross. The bread tasted like cake. I even ate bacon and I was thoroughly sick. Chocolate and jam.
And this is in a family that relatively you had something to eat.
Yeah.
You weren't hungry as the others.
Oh yes. I had lost a lot of weight, but not as much as my father had. Who, now I tell you after what happened afterwards. So, of course, there were very, very anxious months of the war, just especially at the end of the war when Hitler particularly got furious because he was losing. You know, I mean, the killings were not from the air. I mean, the taking into the hostage taking was tremendous. I mean, you have no idea what happened during these last March, April of the war. These last couple of months.
And now you were aware of it because you weren't hidden anymore.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I was not hidden anymore. I was listening to the radio, but then, of course, Holland didn't get very much information itself. You know, doctor listened once per day to the BBC secretly somewhere, and he came back home with the reports we needed to know. You know, we were interested in. We only got dished up what the Germans were interested in. So.
Do you remember the German information?
No. I only remember No, I didn't ever listen even to the German stations, to the radio stations, the Dutch news stations, because it was all rubbish. It was all German. It was all they were given in Dutch, but they were all so Nazi that I didn't listen to them. I didn't get any satisfaction out of that. I mean, I only got annoyed. If they reported winnings here and they'd done well on that front and they had done well on that front and they'd killed so many of our good people, that I wasn't interested in. But as I said, the doctor provided us with the news from the BBC occasionally. And so that is how we kept up to date. And there were also illegal newspapers going around to the people who were, not liable is not a word for them, who were interested and not afraid to read them. And then one day we were being liberated, and the joy was just so overshadowed with the misery that it was hardly possible for me to go out in the street and meet the English and the Americans who had come to Rotterdam, in their tanks, and who were throwing flowers. But I felt I hardly could join in them. I couldn't dance and jump and be happy because I didn't know what had happened to my parents, and I didn't know what had happened to my brother and the rest of my family, who were not few. Not my direct family, but all my uncles and aunts and nephews and cousins and what have you. So anyway, it was not long after when it was, I think about a couple of weeks it must have been, I have lost track of time there then too, so I stayed with the family Sandman. We'd also already discussed what I was going to do, where I was going to do, what if I didn't, if my parents were not there anymore.
Wasn't it obvious for you that you have to go home to check?
Yeah, of course I had to check. But everything was in such turmoil. I knew that the Germans had taken over our house. So I really had to wait till I was being informed what was going to happen to me. So in the meantime, I stayed with Adrie, hoping, contacting,
Adrie?
Pardon?
You went back to Adrie?
No, I contacted her. I contacted Adrie, and I let her know then where I was. And so she said, look, Ree, of course my parents would have done the same, and my brother would have done the same. We all would have had to contact Adrie to know where everybody is and what's to happen. So she said to me...
They all knew where is she living?
Yeah.
Because you didn't know her before the war, did you?
No, I didn't know her. I knew the bakery. I knew that they had a bakery. But that was all. I didn't know her before the war. But of course my parents and my brother also had her address. We were given her address at the Smith family, where we were, at the first stage. So I contacted Adrie, and she told me to just be patient, and she would get back to me as soon as she had heard anything from my parents or my brother or the lot. Or if she found out that they had been picked up from somewhere and were not there anymore, she was going to inform me too. So these were a couple of very anxious weeks, of course, for me, till after 3 weeks she did contact me and told me that they were all there, that father and mother had survived and that my brother also had survived the war. So now it was a matter of arranging a meeting, or because our house was occupied by other people. I don't know whether the Germans were still, maybe the Germans by that time, after 3 weeks, I don't think they were Germans were anymore there. So who was in there, I don't know what they'd done with the house. We rented that house, it was not our own. So, so we arranged for a meeting place at the Sandman family where I was. And that is where I met my father and mother 3 weeks after the war. My father, you should have seen him. He was like a matchstick. He was, before the war, he was a big man. He was not fat, but tall. And, you know, well built and well fed and healthy. He was like a matchstick. He told me he weighed 53 kilos then. And my mother, the same. She always was big and fat, but she had lost beyond belief. But you know, they were well, and so they were arranging. They were arranging with the government that they'd get a place to rent in the same place where they lived before. Not the same house, but in Voorburg. So they did that, and in the meantime, and my brother, he stayed with the farmers in Friesland in the meantime, because food was still very scarce, and he had a good home there. He had been there apparently all the time since he left Pasen. Since he left, he went to Friesland. I don't know why and how he got there, why he went to Friesland, I don't know. Whether he had somewhere in between, somewhere where he has been, but all the time he has been in Friesland, and my parents all the time had been in Rotterdam. Together. And there was a time, I think for about 3 or 4 months, they had to be separated. Yeah, the last 3 months of the war, they had to be separated.
And your aunt didn't know about them all the time?
No way. No. There was no contact with nobody.
They were at the same place all the time?
My parents were at the same place all the time, except for the last 3 or 4 months. They were had to be separated.
And you stayed in Holland after the war?
Yeah, now I tell you what happened to me after the war. Having had experience with child education, little ones. The little ones were only 11 months when I came there. Mrs. Sandman suggested to me to do a course for, it is called the Tesselschade course. It was a course for, it was called Baby and Child Care and Education. Pedagogy. Child care and pedagogy. Yeah?
Pedagogy.
Yeah. And it was called Tesselschade, and they had a course in Amsterdam and they had a course in Rotterdam. So she suggested for me to take that course in Rotterdam, so that at least I would have a diploma in my pocket. I had not learned nothing, I'd done nothing. From the word go, when I was expelled from school, I never wanted even to speak a word German anymore. I had a first year of French, and I think I was in my second year of English. All I really wanted, I didn't want to go back to school. You know, at that age, I mean, I was 22 then? Yeah. I didn't want to go to high school anymore, which was really stupid, which I should have done. But I did want to learn either French or English. I wanted to learn another language. And I was interested in the children, and I didn't mind, you know, doing a child course, child education, child care education course.
But you didn't stay in Holland
so
for long.
Yes, I did. That course was a course of 2 years. So the Sandmans offered me while I was there to stay there. So after the war, after everything was finished, I went respectively to America, back to Holland, to Indonesia, to Australia. No, first to New Zealand and to Australia, where I at long last became religious and decided last year only to make Aliyah, where I'm here now for 1 year.
Okay, thank you very much.